Hello and welcome to my tutorial, fellow Grime and Dark painters. I have been quite busy with work and painting, but today we have a tutorial on how to do really gritty swamp bases with lots of moss and grimness. This tutorial merely is a showcase on how I did my Sylvanas bases and is highly customizable. But let's get on with the show. Here I have a 32mm base, and first I dry fitted a piece of cork material over the base. I wanted to leave a good portion of the base showing, only slightly elevating. I commonly use hobby glue to put the cork pieces on the bases, and added some super glue to fix few smaller ribbed pieces of cork on the base. For the terrain texture, I am using a 1-to-1 mix of rough terrain and wet mud, both from AK Interactive. You can use astrogranite or Sterland mud for this purpose, but I like working with the huge economy bottles AK provide. Spread the texture evenly on the base, hiding the cork material underneath. I use an old brush to just, slap the texture on, working the crevices and edges of the cork. Make sure to leave a spot on the base for your miniature's feet and plan your bases accordingly. Sylvanas triads fit this kind of base perfectly, as they have quite a small feet placement, so I can create a rather occupied swamp floor here. Because my Sylvanas are a bit to the evil sacrificial side, I added a skull on the base for dramatic effect. The idea behind this is that the forest folk drown everyone trespassing the grounds to the swamp and let the bloated corpses rot in the swamp waters. Add some super glue to selected spots and work a few pieces of tree bush from GreenStuffWorld on the base. You can see me struggling with placing the terrain here, so you can have a little laugh at my inaptitude. You can make your own moss-like tree bushes from a sponge or an old bed mattress foam by using a blender or something similar. Just be advised though, using your wife's smoothie blender will get you in trouble, but sacrifices must be made. Next up is some messy sprinkling of AK Interactive moss texture. This is a very fine grained foam material that we are going to sprinkle over the base. I used hobby glue diluted with water and applied it on the base with a brush. This will make the moss texture to stick in the base really well, but still retain the gritty realistic look. I wanted to add something a little more and added dried grapevine branches on the base. Yet again my wife made the sacrifice and ate the grapes, so I could have the branches dried up in the oven. Perfect miniature basing materials. Next part of the tutorial is unfortunately very poorly filmed, and I'm sorry for it. The camera light went up bollocks on me when I switched to my airbrushing table. I primed the base with Vallejo black primer, followed by a quick blast with Tindalos Red, and finished it off by adding slight amount of Moonray Grey. Tindalos Red is a very brownish red and really works well on the base to add some warm colors. You don't have to airbrush these colors, you can stipple or dry brush them on if you so please. Once the base has all the basic colors, I start applying a slight amount of streaking grime for dark vehicles. This is a very greenish grey color and looks very nice over grey and red. Once the grime has been applied, I added a slight amount of black oil paint diluted to a wash over the base to add a few darker shadows. You can use null oil diluted with acrylic medium for this step, but I like working with oils. The base is already starting to look really nice, but we add some color to the moss parts of the base now. Wet your brush with slime dark grime and stipple a drop on the large moss parts and on the moss texture. Only add a drop at a time, so you can see the enamel wash spread over the sponge material. Looks damn nice. To give the moss even more color variance, we add a few drops of moss deposits, again from AK. This will give the base more brighter spots of moss and it looks really nice and realistic. Paint the skull with neutral grey color. I used Miskatonic grey from scale 75 to give the skull a slightly more brighter color. You can add some moss deposits afterwards to tie it to the base more realistically. With the base nearly complete, we come over the lower part of the base with AK Puddles wet effect. Spread the wet effect drop by drop with a small brush over the lower area of the base, working thin layers. I strongly recommend you put some of the effect on a mixing cup to avoid air bubbles, which occur more frequently when squeezed from the bottle straight up. If there is air bubbles on the wet effect on the base, try and pop them off. If you let them dry up, they burst and leave the base with very silly holes in the water, breaking the immersion of the swamp water. You can get more depth to the swamp water effect by working more layers. However, keep in mind that the wet effect does shrink when it dries up, so let it cure for at least a few hours before applying another layer. This is best done when patch painting or building to let the bases cure. And that's the base done. You can definitely add some dry brushing over the base if you like, or alter the colors. It's all easily modifiable. I added some great looking shrubbery tufts on at the base to really bring out the overgrown swamp-like look. Some great shrubbery tufts can be found, for example, on Army Painter collection. If you enjoyed the tutorial, please consider subscribing, hit that like button and check out my other pages for more stuff. You can see what I'm working on at Instagram at grave.hammer and Facebook Gravehammer Miniatures. Happy wargaming, have fun hopping, and as always, stay grim and dark.